Hello, Texas, and welcome to a candid conversation about what powers modern life. If you're looking for facts about our energy landscape and how oil and natural gas provides energy security for our state, nation, and allies around the globe, you've come to the right place. This is TXOGA Talks, where energy meets insight. Welcome back to another episode of TXOGA Talks, a podcast brought to you by the Texas Oil and Gas Association, what we refer to as TXOGA for short. Our purpose for this show is to have a candid conversation about all things Texas, but focusing on our energy needs and our energy future. I'm Todd Staples, and I'm proud to serve as your host. Now, let me tell you just a little bit about TXOGA. It's a statewide trade association. Our members are individual companies that collectively represent about 90% of the oil and natural gas that's produced in Texas. They are responsible for the vast majority of the state's pipelines, of our state's refineries, our LNG facilities, and our service companies. Texas is a unique state. We produce about 43% of all the crude oil produced in the country and about 30% of the natural gas. When we say things are bigger in Texas, folks, it's not just bragging, these are facts. Our mission at TXOGA is to promote a robust oil and natural gas industry and to advocate for sound science-based policies and free market principles. We strive to bring you guests that bring a unique conversation that tells us about the story of Texas, about our economy, and certainly our industry. And today's guest covers all of those bases. You see that TXOGA offers many different benefits for membership, and one of those is a long-standing partnership with Texas Mutual dating all the way back to 2001. Joining us today is Jeanette Ward, the president and CEO of Texas Mutual Insurance Company. Jeanette, welcome to the show.
All right. Thank you, Todd. It's really nice to be here today.
We're glad you're here, and I want to talk about Texas Mutual and tell our listeners how it started and all those things. But before we do that, I want to find out about you. So you tell us a little bit about your career and what you've been doing that led you to become the president and CEO of what I think is one of the most important companies that we have here in Texas. And we'll talk about why that is in a little bit.
All right. Well, thank you. Yeah, totally thrilled to be here. Lifelong Texan. I was born in West Texas, family in the oil business.
All right.
But my father saw trees in basic training in the Army, so we ended up in East Texas.
Good.
But I moved to Austin to go to college back in 1988. I was working at the Capitol when they passed a bill that created us, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But right after college, I ended up working at Texas Mutual. It was my temporary job until I got my real job.
Wow.
And I've spent 32 years there, became CEO a couple of years ago. So been all over the company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. You know, you really don't hear that a lot these days about individuals who have spent their entire career with one company and then have risen to the very top of the top. What are some takeaways for our listeners that might be thinking about their careers that you learned in that process?
Oh, gosh. Well, the first thing, I think I became known as a problem solver. So what I tell people is do your job, learn your job really well, but look up and find out, like, what else could I help make better? And I think I got recognized for that because I would this process doesn't make sense. So I'm going to work with others. I'm going to improve it along the way. And so that's really, I think, what helped me move into different departments and different areas because I showed that I had that aptitude to not only solve problems, but learn and make things better. The other thing, I talk about this a lot because that was fine in my early career, but when it came to sitting in a boardroom or walking in a room full of politicians or agents or business people, I know all the things. I had to learn how to be confident and walk in that room and belong. And so what I tell people now is if something's really hard and scary and you don't want to do it, that's probably the one thing you should try to do. Networking, giving presentations, speaking up in that meeting, don't run away from the things you fear. You got to actually do them. And then you get better.
That's good advice. Kind of work outside your comfort zone a little bit. And it doesn't sound like you're saying to people, go chase wild things, but look at what's on the table and be a part of that solution. That's great advice.
Absolutely.
Maybe you need to write a book about this.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, I did. So you worked at the Capitol a little bit too, which is right over our shoulders here. And that was in college or after college?
While I was
in
college. Yeah.
Is that right? Did you work in an office or work in a sergeant's office, or
I was started in the sergeant's office, and then I moved over to the redistricting office, and I was a receptionist there. It was boring most of the time, so I was able to study, answer phones, and then finish school that way. It was a great way to go to school.
Well, for our listeners, so in the sergeant's office, is the sergeant is the one who just kind of makes certain that the chamber works appropriately, and you'll run errands, deliver copies of bills and all that kind of fun stuff. And you really have an opportunity to learn a lot about state government that way.
I did. And I was on the House floor when they passed the bill that created our company, which is really funny.
So let's just talk about Texas Mutual, because it's interesting that you were on the House floor when it was created. Most companies are not created as an act of the legislature. And, you know, a lot of people might think, well, why would Texas even want to do that? So let's hear it from someone that was there in the very beginning.
Yeah, even though at the time on the House floor, I didn't know what they were talking about, but I learned it later. But workers' comp was in a real crisis in Texas. It was extremely unaffordable. There were a lot of, I'd say, legal litigation matters that were driving up costs significantly, and people weren't really being taken care of when they were hurt on the job.
And what year was this?
This was in all through the 80s, especially the late 80s.
Yes.
A lot of insurance carriers would not write comp in the state, so there was this one company that was sort of the insurer of last resort, where all the business ended up there. They were charging very high rates, and businesses were leaving the state or not coming. It was really hard for economic development activity to happen at the time. So I love this. This is, you know, maybe I'll be getting politics one day, but what I loved about the solution they came up with was a bunch of people got in the room, labor, business, insurance companies, doctors, everyone got in a room, and they came up with a compromise system that made sure that an injured worker was going to be taken care of, but there won't be these large outsized settlements that are going to drive up costs.
For everyone.
For everyone,
right.
Yeah. So it has lifetime medical for your workers' comp injury, and then you get your income benefits paid. So in-tax system with its own kind of dispute resolution process. And then in addition, we were created to be a competitive force in the market, to kind of incent other carriers to come back into the market and write comp. There's some more tweaks that happen along the way, but for the most part, it works for business. It works for injured workers. It works for the doctors that are providing care for those injured workers.
Well, you have to have all of those stakeholder groups participating and benefiting from a system, or it gets out of kilter and you just don't have the balance that you need. And that's exciting to hear that you were there in the beginning when that was formed. And for every listener that we have today, if you've had to renew your auto insurance lately or your homeowner's insurance, you can understand a little bit what Jeanette is talking about, because costs get so prohibitive that it just doesn't work. And in Texas, we want to take care of our workers. We want to make certain there's a good system. If someone is injured at work, that they're going to be taken care of, their families are going to be taken care of. And so the legislature did step up. I think Bob Bullock was lieutenant governor at that time. And I remember that story, or bits and pieces of it, because in 2003, I was in the Senate when we kind of reorganized and refreshed that system as well. So that's great. I hadn't heard all those details. Thanks for sharing that. Now, one thing about Texas Mutual, who owns it and who governs it, and how does that work if the legislature created it?
Yeah, and we've been through some evolution legislatively as the system has been tweaked along the way. So when we were first created, we were considered a quasi-governmental entity, but the assets of the company have never belonged to the state, nor do the liabilities. We were started with a revenue bond that we paid back very quickly. We were called, and this is just going to roll off the tongue, the first name we had was the Texas Workers' Compensation Insurance Fund, which, you know, I used to have to answer the phone and say, Texas Workers' Compensation Insurance Fund, may I help you? But later we became a mutual company, which means we're owned by our policyholders. But the main thing, we're still in the statute because we are that insurer of last resort. So most of the companies we write are in sort of the normal market, but we are there for for policyholders who can't get coverage elsewhere. Think really hazardous work, dynamite manufacturers, something that comes to mind.
Right.
So we're in the statute to be that for the whole state. And then the governor appoints 5 of our 9 board members, including our chair, and the rest of our board are elected by our policyholders because we're a mutual company.
Okay. Well, That's good because so you're really owned by the people that use your
Our
service, right?
policyholders.
And
Yep.
that's great. And government's role in Texas, most Texans think it ought to be limited and let the free market work. And sometimes the marketplace just isn't working. And Texans in the late 80s experienced that,
Hmm.
but they didn't design something that was a state-run program,
Right.
which I think is what makes Texas Mutual work today because you're responsible to those who are your insurers essentially.
Exactly.
That's good. Well, I want to talk and shift gears a little bit just about the importance of workers' compensation, and we've discussed it some, but obviously in the oil and gas industry, um, it's a workplace. It's not a office setting.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
out in the field a lot of time. There are things that are out of control. And so having a system to make certain that our workers are taken care of in the event that something doesn't go as planned
Hmm.
is very important. So how do you see, as the president and CEO of Texas Mutual, workers' compensation fitting into the overall picture of a successful operation?
Yeah. I mean, we're basically a good safety net. Number one, safety is an important word here. We're going to help policyholders with resources to keep their employees safe. But the more important thing is when an injury does happen, we're going to be there. We're going to help make sure that that injured worker is taken care of during that time period. We have a great medical network of doctors who understand how to treat workers' comp injuries. The important thing is you define the compensable injury only because the policyholder is only responsible for that.
Mm-hmm.
So not only do we have doctors, but our adjusters understand how to make sure we're clear about the work-related injury. We get them care for that injury, and then we try to get them back to a productive work life as quickly as possible.
So if I'm a worker and I'm on a location and I get injured, my normal healthcare policy is not what I go to.
Yep.
You're saying that it goes through Texas Mutual.
It needs to go through Texas Mutual, and then any income that you're missing while you're not working will replace that income as
Now,
well.
that's a great benefit right
It's a
there,
great
right?
benefit, yeah.
It's good for the employee for sure. It's good for the company. And now is it mandatory that you have workers' compensation in Texas?
No.
Is that different from other states?
It is. Texas, we got to be different. Lifelong Texan here, multi-generation Texan. No, it's not required, which I think goes to our business-friendly environment. But there's a huge benefit to employers who choose workers' comp because if you go bare or don't have coverage, you're exposed to potential lawsuits. I mentioned earlier that lawsuits were a big problem driving cost up in the 80s. That's essentially gone away now. I mean, injured workers can get lawyers, but there's no big payday like there used to be. So if you have comp, you're shielded from lawsuits from employers.
Well, and as an employee, the last thing you want if you're injured, if something happens, is to start arguing over how to get paid, what you're going to get paid. And there's some that, get me wrong, there's some people that like to argue about that, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of attorneys that like to argue about that. And I think what I'm hearing, the way that Texas Mutual is designed and our workers' comp system in Texas is designed, is to make certain the benefits go to the injured employee and not to third parties who aren't part of their care.
Yeah.
And now, if someone's not happy, is there any way to appeal what goes on? And tell us a little bit how might that work?
Yeah, there's a division of workers' comp, which is sort of there to handle any disputes.
And that division of workers' comp is at the Texas Department of Insurance. Is that right?
It's an entity of them.
It's not part of Texas Mutual. It's a separate, and it is a state entity.
It's a state entity, and so all disputes can flow through there. There's also an Office of Injured Worker Counsel, which provides free legal advice to workers injured on the job. And then an injured worker can hire an attorney if they want to, but those payments to the attorney are going to come out of the injured workers' payments. So it's really trying to say we've got plenty of avenues for you to get the care you need. If you don't agree, we have plenty of avenues for you to have a fair trial within a regulatory system, and we're offering you free resources. So it's really, I think, worker friendly, but not to the point of driving unnecessary costs into the system.
Well, that's something that you have to balance out. Now, I mentioned earlier about all of our auto policies and homeowner policies have been increasing pretty significantly the past few years. Tell us about workers' comp cost and how has that been going the last few years?
That's my favorite story to tell. As an entity created to be a competitive force in the market, and also we always are looking at what can we do to make the system more efficient ourselves. But since we were created insurance rates and workers' comp have gone down almost 80%.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
So that again.
Almost 80%.
Down, not
Down,
up.
not up.
All the other insurance policies have been going up.
No.
But you're telling me workers' comp costs since y'all been created have declined that significantly.
And yeah, it's incredible.
What do you attribute that to? That's amazing.
Well, the system working well. So getting those unnecessary litigation costs out has helped. Workplaces are safer. That's a great thing. I mean, you know, we like to take credit for safer workplaces, but we definitely encourage safety. But I just think you look around and there's more of an understanding of how important safety is. I think probably some of the TXOGA employers, their businesses, they're probably dealing frequently with bigger companies who require comp, and they also require low E-mods and safe workplaces. So all of that is really, I think, incented safer workplaces across the board. And that's probably the bigger driver that's causing those rates to go down.
The safety issue. I'm glad you mentioned that because we've talked a lot about being injured, and that's not what we want to have at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
But you mentioned safety and safety being a big part of it. I know at the Texas Oil and Gas Association, we have the Workers' Compensation Safety Group.
Yeah.
Our administrator is Neil Carlton. He runs what we call the TXOGA Insurance Agency, and he works with TXOGA member companies and gets them to participate in our workers' comp safety group.
Yep.
And that safety group is through Texas Mutual, which is why I'm so delighted you're with us today to have that conversation. Tell us a little bit about safety groups and how that got started and why that's an important part of not just oil and gas, but other industries as well.
Yeah, safety groups are essentially, it's sort of grouping a bunch of like businesses and sort of pulling them together, and if they're going to be the safer businesses for more purchasing power. So in the case of TXOGA, because we know y'all are bringing us some of the best businesses in oil and gas, we're giving you an extra discount for your group purchasing, 12.5%.
And that benefit goes directly to those companies that are participating. It's what the exciting thing is. I mean, if you're participating as a company that's a member of TXOGA in the Workers' Comp Safety Group with Texas Mutual, you're the ones getting that benefit. And in this day and age, that's important to get all the benefits of reductions that you can.
Absolutely. And you think about that almost 80% reduction over time in general, safety group members are probably had an outsized, I mean, they're probably higher than that in terms of the reduction in rates they've been paying if you've been with us for a long time. Yeah. And there's other benefits too. You know, when we do well, the board approves usually a general dividend, which all policyholders get a portion of, but safety groups are also qualified potentially for an additional dividend if the group performs well.
I want to get into those dividend amounts because that's important to people. But before we do, I want to be very careful. If you are an oil and gas company and you want to make certain that you're getting the best deal you can on workers' compensation insurance, the best person you can call, Jeanette, is their insurance agent because y'all work directly. Even though we have the TXOGA Workers' Comp Safety Group, we don't try to have agents that compete with your family agent or your business agent. You can use your insurance agent, and we encourage you to. We want you to do that, and that's how that works because you all work with those agents and train them, don't you, on what's possible under the safety groups? Absolutely,
and a lot of the agents we work with know about these safety groups, and so they're going to want to work with Neil and help get their good policyholders into these safety groups to get them the best prices possible. And that second bite of the apple on dividends is really enticing.
How often are dividends paid?
Once a year.
Once a year. That's nice to get a dividend for your participation in an insurance program. And you get that dividend because you're the owner of the company.
Yeah, agreed. And so kind of another little side commercial, rates down almost 80%. You get that 12.5% discount if you're in the TXOGA program. And then we've also paid back $4.8 billion, $4.9 billion in dividends since we started paying dividends.
On top of the safety program, just for because you are a part of Texas Mutual. So there's a lot of win-win. It sounds like a win-win-win to me there.
Yeah, because we look at it, we want to do everything we can to help the economy be strong. Workers' comp was not doing that in the 80s. So we're doing what we can to make sure that the 80s doesn't happen again.
Well, and I remember, Jeanette, in the early 2000s when I was working on updating some of those reforms, I had a company come to me
Mm-hmm.
that all they did was drive trucks around and deliver things. And they said their workers' comp costs every month were actually more than their fuel costs.
Oh.
And all they were doing were driving around.
Yeah.
And they said it's just so out of balance. We have to have some reforms. And I remember working with representatives of Texas Mutual then, getting good ideas on how injured workers can be protected,
Yeah.
but that Texas can be competitive with other states
Yeah.
when we're trying to attract these businesses. Ladies and gentlemen, we're listening to Jeanette Ward, the president and CEO of Texas Mutual Insurance Company, that's with us today. Stay with us. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Neil Carlton, president of the TXOGA Insurance Agency. The TXOGA Insurance Agency is pleased to sponsor today's episode of the TXOGA Talks podcast. TXOGA members have access to the TXOGA Safety Group with Texas Mutual and get a premium discount of 12.4%, as well as the possibility to earn 2 dividends. Participants also have access to unique safety tools to keep their team safe and on the job. Visit TXOGAinsurance.com for more information.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, again joined by Jeanette Ward, the CEO and president of Texas Mutual. And before the break, we were talking about, Jeanette, workers' compensation safety groups like we have at TXOGA. And you mentioned some of the savings and discounts that people have from participating in our safety group. And I would just want to tell us a little bit more about that, about if you're in the oil and gas business and you are in a company. Your company may be very big and be a self-insured, right?
Yeah.
They do that.
Yeah.
And so it has its own system. It still has to comply with state requirements and those type of things. But if you're a company that it might make more sense to be with Texas Mutual and then TXOGA Safety Group, there's some real meaningful dollars that I've seen that companies are benefiting from. And can you give us some specifics there on how some of that's worked?
Yeah. So, I kind of gave you the big picture earlier, 4.8, 4.9 billion in total general dividends over the years. But the TXOGA Safety Group in particular, since we started the group in 2001, and it is one of our longest running groups, and we value the partnership very much. For the safety group dividend portion, about 48 million has been paid. And for the general dividend, just over 400 million, almost 500 million. So that means if you are a member of TXOGA and you've been a member that whole time, $483 million has gone back to you.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money, yes. And we're really proud of that.
Well, we are too. And those go directly to the policyholders themselves. And so they're able to have those cost savings at their companies and to be more successful and hire more people and to be a part of making Texas the 3rd largest natural gas producing state in the country and the 4th largest, in the world.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
The world. Yeah.
If Texas were its own country, would be the 3rd largest natural gas producing country in the world and the 4th largest crude oil producing country in the world. So what happens in Texas does shape the world.
It does.
And making certain that people can continue to grow and invest is very important.
Yep.
Well, so the dollar amounts are certainly important, but safety of our employees is the most important thing, I think, at any company. And when I started at TXOGA about 11 years ago and we'd go to these events, everything started with a safety moment. Everyone, you'd have a safety talk. You'd have a reminder to hold the handrail when you're going down, which I should have done the other day, and I didn't. It was not a good experience. But I think promoting safety, and so Neil at our workers' comp safety group has started something called TXOGA Safety Talks newsletter.
Yeah.
And that's been very effective. And we send that out to our participating members, and it's just tips that you can share with your employees, and it has a little test that you can make them take if you want to do that, which is kind of a good thing. You guys have a lot of safety ideas. I'm sure we probably got that from you all, but I noticed when I first got here and started paying attention that Texas Mutual really does develop safety programs that you make available to people that participate. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, so we have a couple of things. Number one, you can't beat person to person. So we have more on the ground safety experts in Texas than any other insurance carrier.
Oh, really?
And I'm
You have
proud.
the safety experts working for
Yeah.
Texas Mutual.
Yeah, and so they'll go out and visit accounts, and just help them evaluate their safety program, provide, recommendations on what they can do to be safer. And then, of course, if a big accident happens, they're there also to help, let's learn what we can do to improve. But we also have a lot of other important tools. We have online access to tons of safety training, things that you can print, things that you can pull up on an iPad at the work site. You can sit your employees down in front of a computer and have them take a test, go through the training. So we try to make it as easy as possible to do that. We partner with several different software vendors, but you basically log into our website and you have access to anything you need as an employer.
That's a fantastic benefit to companies, particularly small companies who, they don't have a big HR department. The one person wears about 15 different hats. I know in my business in the past, that's the way we did it. So having access to tools like this really does help your productivity. It keeps your worker safety at the highest level, and it allows you to deliver to your customers, which is what we're all in business to do, is to deliver those customers and then get paid.
And as efficiently as possible. And it's, there's detailed information by industry, which you guys are likely accessing, that's really helping pinpoint what you need from a safety
Now, of all of those safety programs, Jeanette, that you've seen, is there anything that you like more than the other? Or is there anything that maybe is underutilized that people should know more about? Is it?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I'd say I wish everyone would use more of our tools all the time, no matter what it is. I'm sort of old fashioned. The concept of a toolbox talk, where a foreman or someone can just print something and go have a quick meeting and just remind people what they need to do. I think to me has always been sort of I'm a practical person, so that seems super practical and less technology required. The other thing I think about a lot, and we do this sometimes, is what I've seen in my career is accidents happen when people think, oh, I'm just going to climb up there real fast. I left my hammer up there on the roof, or I'm just going to jump down in this trench to grab one thing real fast so nothing will happen. And they don't follow the safety precautions and the protocols. So kind of another thing we try to do in some of our newsletters, like share those stories of you think nothing's going to happen and it's going to. So we use real life stories and de-identify people also to try to help people understand how important safety is.
That's good, because at shift change, you're coming home from your family or whatever you're doing, or you're thinking about, I got to get through this shift to go to a kids' school play or whatever. And what you need to be thinking about is, how can I stay safe? And how can I make certain that the safety of the people that work with me is really taken care of? I'm really glad about those programs. And if you're an oil and gas company, or someone that has a friend or relative that works at an oil and gas company, ask them about if they're participating in these safety mechanisms that's offered by Texas Mutual or the TXOGA Workers' Comp Safety Group, because everyone should. Now, one of the things that's really impressed me about Texas Mutual, among all the things that we've discussed today, it's good for employers, it's good for workers, it's good for having access to safety protocols. Y'all are involved in funding some things in communities as well, right? Tell us a little bit how that works and what all is involved.
Yeah, so we decided several years ago that it wasn't enough just to fulfill our mission. We decided we wanted to expand our mission. Some of it is to be a competitive employer, having a community affairs program, but we really saw it more as, okay, the state wanted us to help Texas businesses thrive. So what else can we do with our profitability to help make that happen? And so we started investing in things like workforce development, helping make sure that employers in Texas have access to middle skill, or have access to employees who have been trained in some of those skilled jobs that are needed throughout the state. So we do a couple of grants every year $4 million for workforce development alone each year.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. And we're looking all over the state because our policyholders are all over the state.
Now, do those grants for workforce development go to policyholders, or do you have something else that goes to policyholders?
I have something else that goes to policyholders. So some of these do end up going to policyholders, but you do not have to be a policyholder to apply.
Okay. So if I'm like a community college or
Yeah.
a high school that's putting together a workforce development. Okay.
Yeah. Hold on to your britches, because we have we have the grants that are open to everyone. It's $4 million for workforce development, and then we do another cycle that's around $4 million for supporting working families. So you can't go to work if you don't have childcare. You can't go to work if you don't have transportation or access to healthcare.
Yeah.
So that's $8 million to nonprofits who are helping prop up the workforce, if that makes sense, all over the state. We have relationships with community colleges focused on safety. And so several, including some out in where a lot of oil and gas activity is in the Permian Basin, that provides free courses to any employer in the area on safety and safe driving. There's certain programs. So we fund that, and we've been funding that for several years. And then we also have specific to policyholders safety grants every year.
How does that work? What would that be for? What's an example?
Any policyholder could apply for, maybe they need fall protection, maybe they need personal protective gear,
PPE.
PPE.
Hear about,
I know. Gloves, boots, mats, non-slip mats for restaurants, just anything that would help shore up their hard safety needs.
Where would you find out about these grants? If I was a community college, which I'm a big fan of, I think they play a great role, or if I'm a company that want to access some of these policyholder grants, where do I go to find out more?
A couple of places, but Texas Mutual, go to our website, and you can find our programs there. You can ask your agent too, and you can ask your TXOGA safety group agent.
Neil Carlton's phone number is
Neil knows all.
But you can find Neil on our website. Absolutely.
Yeah, because he's well versed in the programs we have and the timing of when we do these. So
that's exciting to think that Texas has grown. We're the 8th largest economy in the world today because we welcome business. We welcome it to be a place where you can dream big and have access to jobs that are literally changes the trajectory of families sometimes, the types of jobs that we have in Texas. Exactly. The oil field pays about 76% more than the average salary of other private sector employers, and we're real proud of that.
Yeah.
And we're real proud of the safety programs that are at the forefront of all of our companies. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. I'm just thinking, you're in a pretty good spot, president of a very important entity that makes Texas tick. But as you think into the future, what's on the big horizon? Are there any challenges that you think might need to be worked on? What's your crystal ball look like today, Jeanette, as we wrap up?
Well, I wish I had a crystal ball. There's some interesting challenges. I do think workplaces are going to become safer and safer and safer. I think those rates are probably...
You think technology's playing AI, all those kind of things, or data centers that we keep talking about are a big part of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's some jobs that can never be replaced, with robots. But I do think potentially with some self-driving cars, once we get everyone more roads should get safer.
Sure. Yeah. And we want road safe. I mean, that's we want everyone to go home at night. And the technology that's in cars today is pretty phenomenal and helped a bunch. So that's good point.
Yeah. And that really, the number one cause of fatalities in workers' comp are motor vehicle accidents. And wear your seatbelt and make sure your employees wear their seatbelts too, because we see so many people who die at a workplace accident, in a motor vehicle accident, and they're not restrained. So I think that's really important. I just want to make a big push for that.
I'm glad you said it, because we can be hard-headed.
I know.
We don't like to have to be told to wear helmets. We don't have to be told to buckle up. But if it saves your life, and it's you're there to go home to your child. Yeah. You need to do it.
Yeah. I'm a big proponent of that. But I do think there's lots of opportunities. Texas is just going to continue to I think, grow and thrive. So even though we may see more job automation, I think there's more job opportunities. I just don't know exactly yet what kind of impact it's going to have on workers' comp, but I do think workplaces are going to continue to be safer, which is a good thing at the end of the day.
Which is our goal, is to drive up safety and to drive down costs.
Yeah.
And folks, that's exactly what Texas Mutual has been doing. Jeanette, I'm so delighted that you joined us today at TXOGA Talks. I've learned, I knew a lot about Texas Mutual, but I learned even more about the ways that you're making a difference in communities, working with community colleges with grants available for companies. That's just exciting news. And we appreciate the role that Texas Mutual Insurance is playing in the great state of Texas.
Well, thank you. I'm really happy to tell our story.
Well, you've done a great job of it. And ladies and gentlemen, if you have interest or questions on how your company can participate in the TXOGA Safety Group, or if you want more information about Texas Mutual, you can certainly contact our president of our insurance agency and workers' comp administrator, Neil Carlton. And I'll go ahead and give you Neil's email address right now. It's ncarlton@texogainsurance.com, ncarlton@texogainsurance.com. And that's all for today. We are so delighted to have our guest, Jeanette Ward, with us, president and CEO of Texas Mutual Insurance Company. And thank all of you listeners for tuning in to another episode of TXOGA Talks, where energy meets insight.
The views expressed on this podcast are not intended and should not be construed to be the views of any particular TXOGA member or company. The purpose of this podcast is to engage in candid conversations about energy needs, energy security, and the future of energy.